Hey now, today we're going to take a look at Video Game High School from Plaid Hat Games. Now, Video Game High School is based off of a web series of the same name, and it's actually on a channel I think called Rocket Jump. I have never watched anything on Rocket Jump. I don't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about Video Game High School ahead of time. In fact, when I first saw like a promotional release about the game, with like the really like cartoony artwork on it, I thought, oh, it's like an animated series on YouTube? That'd be kind of cool. I like cartoons. And it's actually a live action series, which kind of made my interest in it plummet quite a bit. I'm not really, I mean, the theme of the game, obviously, as you can tell from the name, it's just about, in like a fictional version of our world, there's actually high schools where people go just to learn video games. Like not even college, just high school. And that just doesn't interest me at all. Sorry. But that's okay, because one thing I am interested in is Plaid Hat Games. And I think that they've released a lot of really solid titles. And so I was really curious to see what they could actually do with this and with the license. So let's go ahead and take a brief look at how the game is played. Then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think. Alright, I'm going to give you a very brief overview of Video Game High School. This is a competitive game for 2 to 4 players. The goal is to be the first person to get to rank 1. There's this little scoreboard around the main player board. Everyone starts off at 50. You need to be the first person to get to 1. As soon as that happens, the game ends and that player is the winner. Now, this game's theme is based off of the Video Game High School series on the YouTube channel Rocket Jump. It's, from what I understand, because I'm not a fan of the show, I've never actually watched a full episode of it, but it's just about a bunch of kids who are in a high school that is explicitly for playing video games and getting better at them. So those are all the different activities you'll be taking in the game. Up here at the top of the board, you have these cards representing different types of games that you can actually compete in to try and set the high score, like Axe Legends, which is like a Guitar Hero type game, and you have Field of Fire, which is, I guess, like a shooting game. You have, what's this called? Laceration Force, which is a fighting game, which I actually like the name of. And Overdrift, which, of course, is a racing game. Now, the goal here is to not only compete in these games, but try your best to set the high score as well. So behind each of these cards, you have a little high score card. Whenever someone is able to set the high score, you will adjust it accordingly. We'll get back to that in a second. Every player is going to have a, and then all the other spots on the board are video game related. So there's different classes. There's FPS class, rhythm class, fighting class, racing class, RTS class. And then there are college or high school type spaces like the dorms, the Kojima Quad, cafeteria, study hall, and the Daily Dean. I don't know. I guess in the show, everyone gets to be Dean for a day. Whatever. Then all the characters are the iconic characters from the show. So here's Ted Wong. Again, I don't really know these characters, but maybe you do. Key Swan. There's Brian D., who looks just generic enough to probably be the main character of the show, and Jenny Matrix here. And if you look at a little back history in the rule book, they're all supposed to be good at something in particular. They also all have special powers. So here, let me show you one of those now, although it probably won't make much sense to you out of context. But so Jenny Matrix here has focus. After you roll dice at the beginning of the round, you may change one die in your active pool to a side of your choice. Just to give you another example, Key Swan has homework, which lets her get another, every time that she would purchase one or more non-permanent skill tokens, she gets to gain an additional non-permanent skill token of the same type. And I'll get back to what all that means. You also get a hand of 3 power-up cards, or power cards, that you get to use during the course of the game, but as soon as you use one on your turn, you don't get it back right away. And these will give you different special abilities, like Key Swans are all about getting more tokens or transforming tokens into other things, and so on. The last couple of things that you get for your character are a set of these 5 skill dice, and you get 3 little standees corresponding to your character. These are where the worker placement part of this game comes in. You'll actually use these to take different spots on the board and get different actions. So once everyone has all their player stuff, you're ready to begin. You'll decide who's going to go first, and then you're going to draw the top card off of this deck in the center of the board, which is the Challenges deck. This is on the Grand Theft Auditorium space. Ah ha ha ha. You'll flip the top one over, so here we have the Banana Cart 7 race. This is the like the common challenge that all the players can be competing for this turn. And the way that these work is that you have these 3 little skill indicators here. So you have gun for FPS, then you have 2 little racing marks. you need to have those skills on you. And it's actually the same thing for the video games as well. And actually, I didn't cover that before, but each of the video games has one of those appropriate symbols. So here's the little guitar symbol, and here's the one for fighting. This is kind of how the game is. You're going to need to try to get all of those different symbols, whether you want to compete for the challenges or compete for the high score in the video games. And that's what all of these little tokens are here. You have tokens corresponding to every one of those skills. And if it's on the predominantly blue side, that means it's a permanent skill token that you'll put into your active pool. If it's on the predominantly yellow side, that means it's a temporary token. And so as soon as you use it, it goes away back to the supply, whereas a permanent token will reset at the start of the next round. So for each of these challenges, there's a positive thing that happens if you succeed at it, and a negative thing. So for the Banana Cart 7 race, if you succeed, you get to change 2 temporary tokens into permanent tokens of the same type. If you don't actually contribute to the challenge at all, so you don't have the right skills, or you just don't bother to put one of your workers on the challenge spot for that turn, you actually lose 2 rank, which is essentially 2 victory points. I'll show you a couple of other ones. You have mini games. This one needs a fist, a gun, and a FPS click, I guess. This one gets you a permanent token, and you get to gain a rank, but if you fail, you have to return a permanent token to its supply. Last one I'll show you, there's quite a few of them. You have the DXM Dance Off, which needs a guitar, a race car for some reason, and another guitar. You get to change 2 temporary tokens into permanent tokens of the same type. If you fail, you discard a power-up card without using its effect. That is not a big deal at all. Once you get done with that initial setup, everyone's got their stuff. You'll decide who the first player is, and then you're going to begin. The first thing that everyone does simultaneously is rolls all of their skill dice. Each of these dice has one of the faces, has a face for every type of skill token, and the yellow shield, which is a wild. So this is King of Tokyo Yahtzee style. You roll the dice 3 times. Each time you get to keep the ones that you want, re-roll whatever other ones you don't want, stop whenever you want, and you have to stop after rolling a total of 3 times. Then you'll put those into your active pool, whatever you're stuck with, combined with whatever skill tokens you had from the previous round, and that's what you have to work with. Then you're going to go into turn order, and in turn order, every player is going to put one of their workers out on a space on the board and take the action. Then it's going to keep going around like that until every player has placed all 3 of their people out on the board, either contributing to the challenges, contributing to the different video games, trying to get the high score, and so on. Now, there can only be 1 person at every video game terminal for the rounds, but all the different other spaces on the board, the challenge can have as many people as possible, so anywhere from up to 4 people. But the rest of the spaces, it's dependent on what it says on the board. So for instance, the cafeteria can only have 1 person in it, but that person can then take that action 3 times once they put one of their standees there. The Kojima Quad can have 2 people, but you can only use it once. It's special ability. The study hall can have 4 people, but they can each only use its ability once, and so on. So let's just go ahead and go through what these different spaces do. All the FPS class, all the different classes at the top half of the board function the same. The fighting class, the rhythm class, and so on. You go there and you either spend 1 die of the applicable type, or I'm sorry, it's just any die in order to get the right token. So if I go to rhythm class, I spend a die and I get a temporary guitar token. Or I can spend 2 dice in order to get a permanent guitar token, or whatever the class happens to be. I'll get that applicable token. You can do this multiple times, or actually up to 3 times. However, you have to stick with the same type of thing. So you can't get a temporary and a permanent with the same action. Each of those spaces can only hold 1 person. The other spaces do different things. The dorms lets you take the first player token for the round. That's the only way that ever changes. And you get to change the face of one of your dice that you haven't used yet. The Kojima Quad lets you take back one of your power cards, because like I said before, every time you use a power card, it goes into your discard pile permanently unless you get it back that way. The Rumpus Loom lets you take a temporary skill token. That's kind of just what you do if you have nothing else to do. The Daily Dean lets you take a permanent or temporary skill token from another player, and there can only be 1 person there doing it 1 time. Study Hall lets you spend 2 skills to gain 1 permanent skill token, and the Cafeteria lets you change the face of a die, and you can do that up to 3 times, but only 1 person can go there at a time, which is kind of odd because it's the cafeteria, but whatever. The challenge, I kind of already explained that. As many people as possible can go there if they have the skills to spend, and if they don't, they're going to take the penalty at the end of the round. And as far as the video games go, you just have to have whatever the applicable skill is for that video game and spend as many as you want. Now, it does the way that I interpreted the rules it doesn't matter if you're trying to set the high score or not. If you just want to get some easy ranks, you just spend your dice, and for every die that you spend, you are going to get 1,000,000 points and therefore gain 1 rank, and then you'll move up the track that many spaces. You can use your skill tokens, you can use the faces of the die, whatever you want. But if you do set the high score, you put one of the high score tokens out there on the board, and congratulations, you just set the high score for that game. But if there's any games that do not set a high score for the round, those get these little bonus point tokens, which will, here, I'll show you one. These little bonus point tokens will stay out on those games that did not have a high score for that round until, in the following rounds, somebody does get the high score for them. And when they do, they get to take those bonus point tokens, put them off to the side, and gain an extra rank for every bonus point token that they took. So that's basically how the video games works. And remember, you have your own special power cards, with a lot of which will be taking tokens from people or giving you extra skill dice, essentially extra skill faces when you need them, gaining back changing dice, changing tokens, everything like that. And you have your own special powers as well. And that's really how the game is going to go. You're going to keep going around doing the worker placement with your standees, rolling your dice at the start of every round, vying for control or vying for all these different tokens in order to get the highest scores in these video games. Maybe doing the challenge, although it doesn't really matter. And just trying to be the best video game high schooler. Let's get to my final thoughts. Well, that's Video Game High School, and you know, I'm a big fan of Plaid Hat in general. Not every one of their games has been a hit for me personally. I think that City of Remnants and BioShock Infinite, The Siege of Columbia were, just for me personally, were kind of bad. But I don't think that they were like terrible games, and I think that there's a lot of people that love those games, so really, what do I know? However, I feel pretty confident in saying that Video Game High School is the worst game by far that Plaid Hat Games has ever put out. And I think that this is the main reason. I think they were kind of aware of this, and this is the main reason why you have really heard nothing about this game. Like, the whole year has just been news about Downwood Tales, their big expansion for Mice and Mystics, and of course Dead of Winter, which has sort of dominated board gaming headlines for the past year. But you would think there would be some room in there for people to be talking about Video Game High School and trying to get it out in the forefront in the public eye and giving you news about it, whereas it just kind of quietly slid under the radar and ships to pre-order backers and just kind of not talking about it anymore or trying to promote it, and I think I see why now. Now, one thing to mention here is that, of course, like I mentioned in the beginning, this is based off of the license of the, this is a licensed game, essentially, based off of Rocket Jump's Video Game High School series, and this was such a bizarre choice. I understand that there's synergy between board gamers and video gamers, you're trying to get that kind of geek nerd cred. I asked a lot of people that I played this with. I played this with 2 different groups of people. We're all gamerly gamers. We are all super nerds, uber geeks. We talk about all kinds of different other nerdy pop culture outside of board games when we're gaming. Not a single one of them had ever watched Video Game High School, and only a few of us had actually said, oh yeah, I've kind of heard of that. So I don't think that this really has that much popularity, not the way that BioShock did, or, you know, any other, like Battlestar Galactica as far as like the license. I mean, this is nowhere near that. So that's kind of a questionable thing. And then even if I liked the show, I mentioned in the beginning that after I heard about this game, I did go and check out their video just to see what it was like, and it's live action, which is completely, it looks completely different than what's on the box and what's on the character artwork. They're like 2 different things, and I understand that not, you know, I think it probably would have been worse just to use still shots from the show. I don't like it when games do that necessarily, but at least maybe have like artwork that actually makes it look like the characters from the show. So that's weird too, and it makes me think that even if I was a fan of the show, I wouldn't care about this game at all. I mean, I would feel no connection to the series that I enjoyed so much in that hypothetical situation. So that was very, very questionable. I mean, I like the artwork. I think it's pretty high quality. I wish there wasn't standees, especially since some of the standees are very, very poor and thin. Like one of them folded right over in half. They seem to be like poorer quality even than the Dead of Winter standees. I don't know. The dice are cool though, and the board looks okay. Everything's very clear as far as graphic design, so that's not too much of an issue. The big problem with this game, in general, it feels like the designer just took a bunch of random popular mechanisms from games of the past couple of years and said, throw them all in there and let's see what happens. So we have Yahtzee style well, not really, it's not Yahtzee anymore. People use this, King of Tokyo is a major example when you think about this kind of dice rolling, where you're rolling 3 times, keeping the ones that you like each time. So it's like, there's that, okay, we'll go into this game, so this is what that kind of game is, right? Dice rolling? Well, no, it's actually worker placement as well. And oh yeah, a healthy smattering of Munchkin, because this game has a lot of take that elements with the power, the player's power cards, just like, oh, nice token, here, I'll take that, yoink, or just move randomly ahead. Okay, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself with that, but that is the main issue here. It's just there's tons and tons of stuff that's just kind of like, well, not tons of stuff, but just like these major mechanisms just thrown together and hoping that they work well, but it just feels very disjointed and clunky. And one of the major issues is a runaway leader problem, together with, hand in hand, with very, very unbalanced characters. Every player takes control of a character, everyone has their own special power on their character, plus a set of power cards, but they are way out of whack. First off, if you really insist on playing this game, do not bother with the promotional character, the Eddie Wong, I think it's called. His powers are so completely like out of whack with the rest of the characters as far as strength. First off, any of the characters that have the special ability to immediately get 3 more skill tokens by using that card is just crazy. That's insanely powerful, but also the ability to just steal tokens from people or to keep players from using their tokens. Compared to like characters, there's a girl, I can't remember her name, she's like a red-haired girl who's got like a funky code name. Her powers are just incredibly weak. Like, it doesn't do anything. Oh, I can change tokens from one to another. That is so completely unimpressive compared to the rest of the power. So, and other ones like the principal, who just gains extra ranks every time I think that he sets a high score. Oh, that is so crazy. So this is why you have a runaway leader problem. It can be very, very clear that one player is just going to skyrocket ahead of the others, and it's very difficult to catch up at that point. This happened in every game that we played. I hate that. And by the way, I think at some point during this, some people are going to be watching this and saying, well, Nick, this game's not supposed to be taken that seriously. It's a beer and pretzels game, one of my least favorite, most overused expressions. Okay, that's fine. The game still takes 45 minutes to an hour to play. That's not a beer and pretzels game to me. A beer and pretzels game is, oh, I really don't care if you totally screw me over with a card because this is going to be over in 20 minutes max. Instead, you can know very early on in this game that you are not going to win, but you will sit there for the rest of that hour. And that's just the way that it is. So that is really, really detestable and one of the things I like the least about this game. The challenges, I think that was probably the area of this game where they could have had like the coolest thing, where you're getting like the video game bouts against one another, but really all it is, oh, cool, so I just have to have these tokens and I'll get this thing. But that thing may not be all that useful to you, especially compared to some of the other challenges. Those are also way out of whack, and especially since sometimes the negative effect for failing the challenge is like, who cares? Especially when your power cards suck. Like, a lot of them are just like, discard one of your power cards. Okay, who cares? And when you've already gotten rid of all your power cards, well, you have no incentive to actually complete the challenge. It is always, always, always better for you to use your dice and your skill tokens to go for the video games and set a high score, unless you simply can't. But in almost every situation, that is better. So if you are not going to really be hurt by the negative impact, and you usually won't, of the challenges, ignore them. They're completely useless. And since that's supposed to be the main theme of the game, is like these kids kind of getting into video game challenges against each other, that seems really silly. Oh man, the worker placement spots are pretty boring and uninspired. Like half the board is simply go here, get a token of the appropriate type, the different video game classes. One of them is just take someone else's token, permanent or temporary. Oh, great, thanks, really appreciate that. Like, I just used my entire turn, or one of my worker placements, just to get that token, possibly more than one, and you just took it by making one placement, completely undoing everything that I did. That is so stupid. Like, that is lazy game design. I'm sorry, it is. Just having things like that and having such a bare minimum of worker placement spots. Every game of this we played felt exactly the same, and by that I mean terrible. Wow. And really, that whole take that Munchkin thing is one of the biggest problems there is with this. I mean, there is no real strategy here other than do the video game challenges as much as you possibly can and try to screw other people before they screw you. That is the main strategy here. And for a game that could have potentially been cool, I mean, I complain about them just throwing a bunch of mechanisms together, but if someone could actually make a game using the King of Tokyo dice rolling mechanic with worker placement that worked very, very well, I'd be all for it. That's a great idea. And I do like the artwork of the game, the idea. I don't like Video Game High School. I have no interest in watching that show at all, but having a video game challenge-inspired game is a great idea as well. But none of this stuff together works at all. I can easily see why this game is not being talked about and why they're just kind of quietly pushing it through under the radar, hoping no one notices it or complains too much about it, and just sells enough based on its license to make its money back. But even then, I can't imagine that people that are into that show would care that much about this, to be willing to seek it out and to waste their time and money on it. I don't know. I don't want to beat this game up too bad. It's very, very bad. There's a lot of really fantastic quality games for Flat Hat Games. I love that company overall. Even the games that I don't like from them are usually at least good and decent and have great component quality and a reason to try them out. I can't recommend this one at all. Video Game High School from Flat Hat Games. Avoid it.